Hello, my name is Casey Stewart, and today I'll be talking about duty ethics and how it applies to the Challenger Shuttle disaster. On January 28, 1986, 7 astronauts were killed when the space shuttle they were piloting, the Challenger, exploded just over a minute into the flight. The failure of the solid rocket booster O-rings to seat properly allowed hot combustion gases to leak from the side of the booster and burn through the external fuel tank. The failure of the O-ring was attributed to several factors, including faulty design of the solid rocket boosters, insufficient low pressure and low temperature testing of the O-ring material and the joints that the O-ring sealed, and a lack of proper communication between different levels of NASA management. The twin solid rocket boosters that were used to take the shuttle to orbit were designed and built by NASA subcontractor Thiokol Corporation. The boosters were 150 feet tall, had diameters of just over 12 feet, and weighed 200,000 pounds empty and 1.3 million pounds when they were loaded with fuel. Due to the size of the boosters, they had to be built in sections, which were then transported to the launch site and reconstructed. Joints were designed to attach the segments to each other using a tang and clevis joint called a field joint. These field joints used two rubber O-rings that circled the circumference of the joint to provide a proper seal and prevent fuel and gas from escaping the booster during firing. The primary and secondary rubber O-rings can be seen here on the photo to the right. For many years leading up to the Challenger disaster, post-launch inspections of the recovered boosters showed that gases were eroding the O-rings. Not only this, in some cases the second seal had been penetrated, allowing gases to escape the outer wall of the booster. The engineers at Thiokol noted that the seals had not been tested at temperatures lower than 52 degrees Fahrenheit, and given that the Challenger's launch window had expected temperatures in the 20s, they did not recommend launching. Management at Thiokol debated and eventually decided to approve the launch, and the O-ring failed as predicted. The shuttle was lost, as were the 7 astronauts that were on board. So what are duty ethics, and how does it apply to the Challenger explosion? So duty ethics, also known as deontological ethics, are concerned with what people do, not with the consequences of their actions. The central tenets are: do the right thing, do it because it's the right thing to do, don't do wrong things and avoid them because they're wrong. Under this form of ethics, you can't justify an action by showing that it produced good consequences, which is why it's sometimes called non-consequentialist. Duty-based ethics are usually what people are talking about when they refer to the principle of the thing. Duty-based ethics teaches that some acts are right or wrong because of the sorts of things that they are, and that people have a duty to act accordingly, regardless of the good or bad consequences that may be produced. So what was the decision that needed to be made? The management at NASA needed to decide if they wanted to launch, despite having insufficient data to guarantee that the O-rings could survive the lower temperatures of the launch window. Some pros and cons of the choice to launch or not launch. Some pros included an on-time schedule that would make financial sense. It would also free up the pad for subsequent mission launches. The following launch was supposed to be a probe to Halley's Comet, and so they wanted to make the window for that launch. Cons included a higher risk of failure, and they would also be going against the dissent of the engineers at Thiokol. Pros and cons of delaying the launch. Pros: it would allow time for further research of the O-ring decay issue. It would also allow for weather conditions to clear up and fall within the parameters, thus reducing risk. Some cons of delaying would be the financial cost of delaying the launch. They would take a reputation hit because of yet another delay. The shuttle mission prior to this one was one of the longest delays in NASA history, so they wanted to avoid that. Another con would be that the pad would not be ready for the scheduled Halley's Comet probe mission launch. In the end, it came down to a decision. The engineers at Thiokol were insistent that it was not safe to launch at any temperature lower than 53 degrees. given that the O-rings of the joints of the solid rocket boosters had not been tested at any temperature below that. Given this and the fact that the O-ring degradation had been observed not only in the primary but also the secondary seal, they concluded it was not safe to launch. But pressure was being asserted by NASA management to gain the approval of Thiokol to launch. So Thiokol directors had a private meeting and eventually decided to go ahead and approve the launch. But what does duty ethics say? So the central tenet of duty ethics is that the right thing must be done at every turn, with no account of possible consequences, good or bad. In duty ethics, the rightness or wrongness of the actual action is solely based on the action itself. The managers at Thiokol and NASA were concerned about the potential consequences of delaying the launch. They were trying to meet an overly ambitious schedule and were more concerned about the consequences of delaying the launch than what the right choice at the moment was. Duty ethics would have served them well in this instance. If consequences were not considered, the right choice would have been to not proceed with launch if the safety of the mission and crew were in danger at all. Duty ethics would say that the choice to risk these things were wrong in itself, and it would have still been wrong even if the shuttle not exploded. Thank you.